Hello everybody, Dark Comitative here from Split Polygon. Welcome to my quick bits. Today we're going to look at some modeling Maya tips that can speed up our workflow. So we have a couple of things on the list. So the first thing would be tabbing. This is a feature that existed forever in Maya for a very long time, and I don't see a lot of people using it. So I wanted to give an example. So let's say you have an object that you need to move, duplicate or move around like so. And then if this is in production, you would expect that the changes will happen. So if you know if you plan properly, for example, you can make this an instance of each other and always have a live version. So no matter how many times you instance this, if you edit the instance, this will all be fine. Now, what happens in case where you don't have an instance or you've already baked the instance and you can't edit it live anymore? Now, that's where the tabbing is very useful, is because what essentially allows you is to take one object and move it and match it to the transformation of any other object. So I use this, like, and this can be used for all sorts of stuff, but I use it for modeling mostly. So let's say that they decided that on the show this is too much detail, like we don't really need it because we're never going to see it this close, so just to waste the polygons. So our task is to let's duplicate it a couple times. Our task is to replace these three with another kind of if this was a screw or something, a bolt. So what we can do is select our new object, shift select shift select our existing object, and then click inside the first column of these. So if you click inside of them and you click tab, you see this one moved. If you keep pressing tab, what will happen is the the new object will receive the transformation of the alt objects. Literally will copy it channel by channel from one to the other. So if you look at them, they're perfectly aligned. So that is what we call tabbing, and you can, if you have, you can duplicate this in place multiple times, and then you can do the same thing for all of these. So the only limitation to this is that the objects that you want to replace cannot be frozen. So if this, like these objects, will have to retain their transforms in order to be able to copy. If this was 000 while it was in this position, then this thing would not work. Just keep that in mind. Okay. So next thing we have is snapping. I'm gonna just quickly grab this and hide it, and I'm gonna unshow this. So a lot of times when you're doing hard surface modeling, for example, you would need to align edges or align objects to kind of make it look, let's say, like a machine, and give it like a machine look. So I'm just gonna grab these edges. All right. And I'm gonna just bevel them quickly. All right. So now I need to duplicate an object and move it and snap it like this. Now, in most cases, like this would be, for example, fine if you eyeball it, but there are cases where you need to be pixel perfect, where this need to be snapped exactly. So one thing you can do is you can select a point on one object and a point on another object, and you can go to modify, snap align objects point to point, and that will snap it perfectly. Okay, so that is a very useful snapping feature that I use all the time, especially if I have objects all over the place and I need to take an object from over here and move it and snap it over here. So I just pick one point, pick another point, and it travels immediately and it snaps. The one thing that doesn't do, it does not match the orientation. It matches point to point. So if the orientation is off, it will snap it, but it will snap it, for example, like this. So another tool that can do that, that will match orientation and position, I'm just going to delete this, is Snap Together tool. So I have this little screw model over here, and what I can do is, let me go back to Polygon mode. I'm going to enable wireframe unshaded. I'm going to go modify Snap Together tool. Now, excuse me, if you go here, you can say move and rotate objects or only move. So um, you can use this one just like the other one where it would move the object only, or you can have it to match the transformation. So if I press V, I can snap it to this point, and if I press V again, I can snap it here, and it's going to give you an indication. It's going to be like, this point will move here. Is that okay? And you need to tell it yes, it's fine by pressing enter. So if you do that, it's going to take it and it's going to move it, and it's going to align it to the normals of these objects. So this is very, very useful tool because you can pick objects from anywhere and align them. And I use this all the time in production where all the buttons, for example, on a character need to be snapped to a vertex. So I would just have a button and I would just duplicate it in place and just snap it like this. You know, possibly as an instance, especially in the early days. Now, what happens if you need to go in reverse? What if this is an object that you're reusing from another character? So this one has the transforms all matched, all live rather. So what if I freeze it and bake it here? So this is at 000, but the object is not on 000 in the world space. So what if you want to take this and you want to modify it and use it on a different character? So you extract it from one character, for example. So how would you take it and make it perfectly flat again, sitting on the grid? You could try to like rotate it and eyeball it, but it's probably not going to be the best thing to do. So one thing I like to do is if you hold D to go to pivot mode, and if you holding D, if you also click Control, it's going to says orient, which means that if it's going to allow you to pick a face, a vertex, or an edge, and if you click that, it will orient the manipulator to that. All right. Now that didn't do anything apart from orienting the manipulator. But now what we can do is we go to Mesh. Not Mesh, sorry, and modify Bake Pivot. And when I click there, I'm going to want to bake the position and orientation as well. Or you can just do one or the other, it depends on what you want. I'm going to click Bake Pivot, and that will give me the values that are making this screw to be in this position relative to the world origin. So if I just select all of these and just zero it out, take this to sorry, to 90 degrees, you can see it's matching perfectly. So now I can take it, modify it, use it somewhere else. All right. So these are a couple of tips that I do to speed up my workflow. The last thing I want to show you, I'm going to hide this, is creasing. Now creasing is something that was not used, and it's still not used in production modeling because it's unpredictable. Like see here, this was just moved from one scene to another and this edge broke. So creasing can be a little bit tricky to use. I know there are studios like Pixar who they do use creasing, but for the most part you want to stay away from creasing, and the reason for that is you're gonna need a lot more polygons to subdivide this mesh and have it look nice on render time. B, it only retains the creasing in the native app you are in. For example, if you do the creasing in Maya, the creasing exists only in Maya. If you export an OBJ, the creases are gone. There are some file formats that can retain creasing, but it doesn't really work great. So for the most part, creasing is a no-no. However, I find it a very useful tool for when you're designing stuff in Maya or where you're not sure, just experimenting with your model. So this is a model that I'm working on at the moment, and if you press 3 to subdivide it, I'm just going to isolate this part. I'm using creasing to judge whether or not I want this to be a sharp edge or a soft edge, for example. Now let's say I want it to be a sharp edge. I can just drag the creasing and have it there. So if you're experimenting, if you're not sure, this is a great tool to kind of evaluate your model, because you do not add any other unnecessary topology, and you're able to preview how your model is going to look like after you properly do the edge weighting. So let's say we're happy with this and we want to commit to this and make it a proper sub-D model. So there's a really cool tool in Maya. It's called Crease. So if you go to Window, Modeling Editor, Crease. At the moment we don't have any crease, right? So if we go to Edit, Create Crease from Mesh, this is going to list all of our edges that are creased, and it's going to tell you the number that the amount of creasing applied. So if you go to Select, there it is. So if you go to Select, it's going to select all the crease sets. Then what you can do is go to Crease tool, and selecting all of them, you can middle click and drag, and that will deactivate all the creasing. But then you already have your selection, so what you can do now is you can do a bevel, and then you can decide to do a bevel. I'm just going to move this out of the way. Or you can do a chamfer, where you have a subdivision edges. And just like that, you've converted your mesh from a non sub-D to a sub-D with a holding edges. So this is very useful tool, and I started to use it quite recently actually, but I'm blown away by its potential, and I just wanted to share it with you guys. So if you guys like this and if it was helpful in any way, please feel free to like and subscribe. It does help me out quite a bit, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.